Stop the tape. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a knife. His hand shot up, freezing everyone mid-motion. The cameras kept rolling, but something had shifted. He stared at the weathered cardboard box sitting on the woman's lap, his face drained of color. This can't be real, he whispered, taking a step back. But it was real. And what was inside that box would shatter everything this family thought they knew. What happened next is something no one in that studio, or watching at home, saw coming. 48 hours earlier, Sarah walked into the Dr. Phil offices with a secret that would destroy her sister's life. Rebecca had spent 15 years in what she believed was a perfect marriage. But Sarah had found their late mother's storage box, marked, "For Rebecca. Open only if something happens to me." Inside were 43 letters. All from Rebecca's husband David. All addressed to their mother. All confessing a devastating truth that had been hidden for 15 years. Rebecca arrived thinking this was about sisterly disagreements, Sarah causing trouble, making accusations. She came ready to defend her husband. She had no idea her entire world would collapse in the next 30 minutes. Dr. Phil started the show the way he always did, direct, no nonsense, cutting through the pleasantries. Rebecca sat on stage, confident and composed. Sarah sat across from her, the box at her feet, out of camera view. "Rebecca, your sister says she has concerns about your marriage," Dr. Phil began. "What do you want to say to that?" Rebecca laughed, not meanly, but with the assurance of someone who knows they're right. "Dr. Phil, my sister has been jealous of me since we were kids. I married a wonderful man, we have a beautiful life, and she can't stand it. She's making up stories too." "I'm not making anything up," Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking. "Mom left something for you. Something I wish I'd never found." That's when Sarah reached down and lifted the box onto her lap. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. The box itself was unremarkable, old, slightly warped, with their mother's careful handwriting across the top. But the way Sarah held it, the way her hands trembled, the way Rebecca's face went from confident to confused to terrified in the span of 3 seconds, everyone in that room knew something massive was about to happen. "What is that?" Rebecca whispered. "It's from Mom," Sarah said. "She wanted you to have it. She wrote on the box that you should only open it if something happened to her." "Well, something happened." Dr. Phil leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Rebecca, before we go any further, I need to ask you, are you prepared to hear something that might be difficult?" Rebecca's eyes never left the box. "What's in there?" Sarah looked at Dr. Phil, then back at her sister. "Letters. From David. To Mom. Starting from right before your wedding." The color drained from Rebecca's face. "That's impossible," Rebecca said, but her voice had lost all its certainty. "David barely knew Mom back then. They only met a few times before we got married." "That's what he told you," Sarah said quietly. "But it wasn't true." Dr. Phil held up his hand. "Hold on. Before we open that box, I want everyone to understand what we're dealing with here. Sarah, you're saying your mother kept correspondence from Rebecca's husband that Rebecca didn't know about?" "Not just correspondence," Sarah said. "Confessions." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The audience was frozen. You could hear the hum of the studio lights, the distant sound of someone shifting in their seat. Rebecca's breathing had become shallow, rapid. "I don't want to see it," Rebecca said suddenly. "Whatever game this is, I don't want to play." "It's not a game," Sarah said, and her voice broke. "Beck, I wouldn't do this to you if it wasn't real. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you for 6 months. I've barely slept. I've rewritten this conversation 100 times in my head. But you need to know." Dr. Phil stood up from his chair, something he rarely did in the middle of a taping. He walked over to Sarah and gestured for the box. "May I?" Sarah handed it to him carefully, like it was full of explosives. In a way it was. Dr. Phil opened the lid. Inside were stacks of envelopes, each one addressed in the same handwriting. He pulled out the first letter. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly faded. He read it silently, his expression shifting from professional curiosity to genuine shock. "Stop the tape," he said quietly. Then louder, "Stop the tape." The cameras stopped. The audience murmured in confusion. This never happened. Dr. Phil never stopped mid-show. He looked at the producers standing just off stage. "We need to handle this differently. Get the therapist on standby. And someone call her husband. He needs to be here for this." Rebecca stood up, her legs unsteady. "What does it say? What did he write?" Dr. Phil's voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. "Rebecca, I need you to sit down. Sarah, I'm going to ask you to come sit next to your sister. And everyone in this audience needs to understand, what we're about to discuss is not entertainment. This is someone's life." He turned to the producer. "Bring her a glass of water. And dim those stage lights. This doesn't need to feel like a spectacle." Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He sat down on the edge of the stage, level with Rebecca instead of above her. He held the letter in his hands like it weighed 100 pounds. "Rebecca, I'm going to tell you what this says. But I want you to know that after today, you're going to have resources. You're going to have support. You're not going to walk out of here alone. Do you understand?" Rebecca nodded, tears already streaming down her face even though she didn't know why yet. Dr. Phil took a breath. "This first letter is dated 1 week before your wedding. David wrote it to your mother. He starts by thanking her for keeping his secret." "What secret?" Rebecca's voice was barely audible. "That he was already married." The studio erupted in gasps. Rebecca's face went white. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible. We have a marriage certificate. We have." "The marriage was annulled 4 days after your wedding." Dr. Phil continued, reading from the letter. "According to what he wrote to your mother, his first wife agreed to stay silent in exchange for a financial settlement. Your mother found out somehow. And he was writing to her, begging her not to tell you." Sarah was crying now too, her hand gripping her sister's. "There are 43 letters in this box, Beck. 43 letters over 15 years. He kept writing to Mom, asking her to keep his secret. And she kept them all. She documented everything." Rebecca's hands were shaking so violently that Dr. Phil signaled for the on-set therapist to come forward. "Why?" Rebecca gasped. "Why would he do this? Why would Mom keep this from me?" But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil pulled out another envelope, this one different from the others. It was addressed to Rebecca in their mother's handwriting. "Your mother left you a letter too," he said gently. "It's dated 3 days before she died." He handed it to Rebecca, who took it with trembling hands. The studio was so quiet you could hear the paper crinkle as she unfolded it. Rebecca read in silence, her lips moving slightly. Then her face crumpled completely, and she let out a sob that seemed to come from somewhere deep and ancient. "She was going to tell me," Rebecca choked out. She says she kept his secret because he convinced her it would destroy me. That I was so happy, so in love, that the truth would break me. And every year she wanted to tell me, but she was afraid. She kept every letter as evidence, in case he ever tried to deny it. She was going to tell me the week after she died, but then, she didn't get the chance." Sarah wrapped her arms around her sister as Rebecca dissolved into tears. Dr. Phil let them cry. He didn't rush the moment, didn't try to move things along for the sake of television pacing. He just sat there, present and solid, while two sisters held each other and mourned not just their mother, but the 15 years Rebecca had spent living in a lie. The audience was crying too. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was witnessing someone's life split into before and after. After several minutes, Dr. Phil spoke again. "Rebecca, I know this feels like the end of the world right now. But I want you to hear me. You are going to survive this. You're going to get through it. And you're going to come out stronger. Rebecca looked up at him, her face blotchy and red. How do I come back from this? 15 years. 15 years of my life were built on a lie. No, Dr. Phil said firmly. 15 years of your life were built on your love, your commitment, your integrity. The lie was his, not yours. You don't carry that burden. He does. He stood up and addressed the audience. This is why we do what we do here. Not for drama. Not for spectacle. But because sometimes, people need a place where the truth can finally come out. Where they're not alone when their world falls apart. He turned back to Rebecca. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to take a break. During that break, you're going to meet with our therapist. You're going to figure out what you want to do next. Whether you want David brought here today, whether you want to confront him privately, whether you want to go straight to a lawyer. Whatever you decide, we'll support you. I want him here, Rebecca said, her voice suddenly clear and strong. I want him to sit in this chair and explain to me how he looked me in the eye every single day for 15 years while lying about who he was. Dr. Phil nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The break lasted 40 minutes instead of the usual 15. During that time, producers tracked down David at his office. He was told his wife was on the Dr. Phil show and that he needed to come immediately. He assumed it was about the sister drama. Maybe he'd get to play the supportive husband on national television. He had no idea he was walking into his own reckoning. When cameras started rolling again, Rebecca was back in her chair, but something about her had changed. The shock had crystallized into something harder, more determined. David walked onto the stage smiling, playing to the audience. Hey, babe, he said to Rebecca, moving to kiss her cheek. She pulled back. Don't. His smile faltered. He looked at Dr. Phil, confused. What's going on? Dr. Phil picked up the box, still sitting where Sarah had left it. David, do you recognize this? David's face went pale. Where did you get that? That's not an answer to my question, Dr. Phil said evenly. I asked if you recognize it. David's eyes darted between Rebecca, Sarah, and the box. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Dr. Phil pulled out one of the letters. Because your handwriting is all over these. 43 letters to your mother-in-law, explaining in great detail how you committed fraud when you married Rebecca. How you were still legally married to someone else. How you paid your first wife to disappear. How you've spent 15 years hiding the truth. The audience gasped. David stood frozen. Rebecca, I can explain. David started, but his voice was shaking. Then explain, Rebecca said coldly. Explain how you looked at me on our wedding day and said vows you knew were meaningless. Explain how you let me introduce you to people as my husband when legally, I was never your wife. Explain how you let me believe we had something real. David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Dr. Phil leaned forward. David, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Were you legally married to another woman when you married Rebecca? Silence. Answer the question, Dr. Phil said, his voice harder now. Yes, David finally whispered. The studio erupted. Rebecca closed her eyes. And did you maintain correspondence with Rebecca's mother, asking her to keep this secret? Yes. For 15 years? Yes. Dr. Phil set down the letter. Then we're done here. Rebecca, you deserve better than this. And David, you need to leave this stage. David tried to speak, but Dr. Phil cut him off. No. You don't get to defend this. You don't get to justify it. You stole 15 years from this woman. The only thing you can do now is let her start rebuilding. Security escorted David off the stage. He went without protest, his shoulders slumped, his face ashen. Rebecca sat very still, staring at the box. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Dr. Phil sat down beside her again. Rebecca, I know you're processing a lot right now. But I want you to hear something important. You're not a victim. You're a survivor. And starting today, You get to decide what your life looks like. I don't even know where to start, Rebecca said. You start with 1 hour, Dr. Phil said gently. You get through the next hour. Then the next one. And we're going to connect you with resources, therapists, lawyers, support groups. You're not doing this alone. He handed her a card. This is the number for one of the best family law attorneys in your state. She's expecting your call. And this, he handed her another card, is a trauma therapist who specializes in betrayal. Your first 5 sessions are covered. Rebecca took the cards, her hands steadier now. Thank you? Don't thank me, Dr. Phil said. Thank your mother. She gave you the truth. She gave you a way out. That box was her final gift to you. Rebecca looked at the box, that unremarkable cardboard container that had held the truth for 3 years. She picked it up, cradling it against her chest. I'm going to keep these letters, she said. Not to torture myself, but as a reminder. A reminder that the truth always comes out eventually. And that lies, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually collapse under their own weight. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. As the show ended and the cameras finally stopped rolling, Dr. Phil walked Rebecca and Sarah off the stage personally. He spoke to them quietly, away from the cameras and the audience, giving them resources and reassurance that would never make it to air. Because that's who Dr. Phil is, someone who understands that television is just the platform. The real work happens in the quiet moments, in the follow-up phone calls, in the connections made after the lights go down. 3 months later, Rebecca sent Dr. Phil a letter. She was divorced, in therapy, and rebuilding. She'd started the Truth Box Project, a support group for women who discovered their marriages were fraudulent. On her desk sat that cardboard box. Not as a monument to betrayal, but as testament to truth, and a mother's love that ensured her daughter would find it. The episode became one of the most watched in Dr. Phil history. Because somewhere out there, someone is living a lie. Someone is one box, one truth, one moment of courage away from freedom. And sometimes, all it takes is someone willing to bring that box to light.